everybody. Thank you for coming back to my channel. Today, I'd like to share with you a conversation I had with Dr. Howard Schlossberg. I know him through the Niskayuna Board of Education, and we also share the same alma mater. We talked about what it's like to be a doctor day to day, and we also talked about some of his personal background. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Well, hi, Howard. Thank you so much for talking with me today. Um, you're not the first board member to join this conversation, and we can talk about that. But I think at first I want to just give you a chance to talk a little bit about yourself and how you grew up. Were you here in New York when you grew up, or?
No, I'm from Philadelphia and spent the first 18 years there, well, suburb outside of Philadelphia. Then I actually went to upstate New York for college and then back to Philadelphia for med school, residency, and fellowship. And then after dragging Michelle, we got married during medical school. After dragging her from Connecticut down to Philadelphia, it was her turn to decide where we lived. And her parents had recently retired to Saratoga, so came back to upstate New York.
I see. Cool. So we have the same alma mater, right? Like we
That's
both
right.
went to
Yep.
Cornell.
Mhm.
Can you tell me a little bit about like maybe what the campus was like when you were there? I think I was probably there after you. What
It
was your
was
experience like? I'm curious.
so physically it is wildly different. We went back about 5 years after we graduated, and even then there were new buildings and things were very different. And I actually interview some of the students for the con, the alumni
Yes.
association, and there's whole like schools that weren't there when we were there. So it's probably very dated, but some things I'm sure are still the same. It's a giant place,
Mm-hmm.
both physically and in terms of students and in terms of options. There
Right.
is just so much to do. You can always find something going on, and there's always some new and thing you never even thought of. But still, it's still not so big that you get, locked out of classes and stuff. So I
Mm-hmm.
remember scrambling to, sign up for classes, which I assume it's all computerized these days. But
Yeah. Yeah. Even when I was there, like it was just starting to be, and people were just like just getting onto Facebook. It was like,
oh,
oh,
yep,
the
yep,
new thing is Facebook. It was very different. Yeah.
right.
I mean, so I graduated in 2005.
Mm.
And when we went back a few years after that, it was like the same. It was like, what? Where did this building come from?
right,
But
right.
you're right. Like it's such a crazy, just like rich place, right? Like rich in terms of like so many different options.
Yep, yep.
That like it's a little bit hard to imagine for such a small town. Because
Yeah,
when I
very, very
first
true.
went there, it was like, oh, this is not Boston, this is not New York City, but it's still pretty overwhelming as
Mhm.
a freshman coming in and be like, whoa, there's so many different stuff to choose from. That's
Right.
really cool. So when you were in school, did you already know you wanted to go to medical school?
I did. That sort of crystallized in high school. At the time, I wanted to be an ophthalmologist, an eye doctor. I couldn't really tell you why. When people ask why I went into oncology, I still can't give a very good answer. It's just sort of
Mm-hmm.
one of those things that, years and years of training experiences kind of guide you in one way or the other. But yeah, I knew I wanted to go into medicine since my teenage years.
So was it competitive back then, like in high school, college, and like I work with a lot of students sometimes who want to go to medical school, and
Mhm.
it's very high pressure. Like, was it also like that back then?
It was to some, it's very variable. Like it all depends how many people apply. The year I applied, of course, was one of those times where everyone decided they wanted to go. So it was tough to get in. I still have my stack of rejection letters. I keep them as a reminder. It's but I did make it, and then somehow graduated. But yes, there was a lot of pressure. I remember, talking to other students, pre-med students, as we were during the application process, and lots of people freaking out. They've sort of planned at least the last few years to in this direction to seek this career, and they might not have the chance to do it. It's not up to them whether they get to do it or not, and that's you learn early on, and with the college application process as well. You learn you're not totally in charge, but you're pretty sure you're going to get in somewhere. You are going to be able to get a bachelor's degree, but as you know, as you move further into specialization, there may come a time where you don't get to decide if you get to
Mm-hmm.
have your career or not. So
Mm-hmm.
that's tough.
Yeah. So was medical school harder or was Cornell harder?
Uh, so there's two ways to answer that. Both were tough. College was harder than it should have been because I did not study well. Uh,
Me too.
you
I'm
know,
the same.
and it's interesting actually. Michelle has been such a tremendous positive impact on my life and others. She's a great person, but we met our sophomore year, and she actually would mock me and force me to study, and I who knows if I would have even have graduated without her there to encourage me, because freshman year of college, suddenly you're free and you can do all this stuff, and hitting the books is
Oh.
not as exciting as going out to grab pizza at 2 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very glad for any number of reasons that I met her and she became part of my life. So college was harder than it should have been, but by the time I got to medical school, I she had trained me, how to study
Mm-hmm.
and to work hard, and so I wouldn't say it was easy, but I worked at it and got through it. Wasn't number one in my class, but I did
So
get
we'll
out.
have to thank Michelle for all of your accomplishments.
Oh yeah. And I've said this before. Any success I've had is due to the people around me, and certainly Michelle.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll have to talk to her next. She's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. I met my husband at Cornell too. I think that
Oh,
happens a lot. Maybe because it is a small town. Like I have a lot of friends who also married someone from their class or
oh yeah.
so it's really interesting.
Everyone's
But
sort
it's
of at the same age and same point in their life, shoved together in a small
Mhm.
location. You're gonna meet some folks.
Right. Yeah, it's beautiful though. I mean, we love it because then we can have the same memories and we have
Hmm.
same like friends who also have the same memories.
Right.
So it's beautiful. I like it.
Mhm.
That's cool. So let's go back a little bit. And I'm really curious to hear a little bit about like when you're younger too.
Okay.
I know like you wanted to be a doctor since you were young. Did that start somewhere? And I know that you're adopted as well. So like, do you
Mhm.
want to talk a little bit about that experience? Like, were you brought up knowing that you were adopted, or
Oh yeah.
did you
It was
find out
never
later?
as Yeah, it was never a secret in the house.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some of the exact details remain a little sketchy. This many years later, I think there was more stigma back in the '70s than now, where everything is much more open. But yeah, I always knew the deal, right? And it was never something hidden or considered weird. It just, yeah, I was adopted.
Mm-hmm.
Still have to listen to my parents.
That's great. So did you have siblings who were also adopted, or did you
Yep, I
just
have
have
my sister Leslie.
Mm.
She's 2 years younger than me. Yep.
And how did you feel about that? I'm always curious. Like when I was growing up, sometimes I'll think, am I adopted? Like, you just like wonder that, right? But like, did you feel like anything? Like, I guess I don't know how to ask this question, but like, did you
It can be
feel
an awkward question. I know what you're trying to say. It
yeah,
can be
yeah.
an
Like,
awkward
did you
question.
wonder like where your biological parents were? Like I was just curious, like from
So
an adult perspective, because I know that sometimes as a kid it's harder to process that, but like you've had time to also process that. So I wonder, now looking back, what are your thoughts about like that process and like maybe like any advice for maybe younger people who like are finding out they're adopted or for parents who have adopted children.
So I think that
So
is way individual in the way
mm,
people perceive things.
yeah.
For example, you referred to biological parents. My parents are my parents in
Mhm.
my mind. And yeah, I was constructed and came out of somebody else, and I appreciate that that person made the decision to so that I could have this life that I have. It could have
Mhm.
gone in a different direction. So I certainly appreciate that. But like I said, my parents are my parents, and that's kind of as far as it goes. In terms of trying to hunt things down and find information, I guess I would like to know what kind of genetic time bombs are lurking inside me, or if I'm like the heir to some European throne would also be pretty cool. But probably not the case. Um, so no, I've never made any attempt to locate anything. Um, but again, that is very individual. And I know folks who have sought out and met, their birth folks, and that goes sometimes good, sometimes bad, depending on the situation.
Mm.
But again, for me personally, it's just just how it is. It's not
Mm,
something that I dwell on like, I am adopted. How is that different from other people?
mm,
Probably because there's never anything hidden or secretive in, growing up. It's just, yeah, here I am.
yeah,
Came here
I
a little
think that's
differently than some other
true,
folks.
right? Because I'm the only child, right? And
Hmm.
sometimes people will ask me, "Whoa, what is it like being the only child, like not having any siblings?" I'm like, I don't know what it would be
Right.
like to not
This
have
is my life. Right.
siblings, you know? So it's
Right.
I think it's similar.
Right.
But I also want to ask you too, like, so your parents were Jewish, right? Or
Hmm.
are Jewish,
Yep.
and you were brought up being Jewish, and
Hmm.
then and I know so that there's the faith part, right? And then there's also sort of the genetics part, right? Of like Jewish people as a, I guess, like genetic, I don't know how to say it, like the ethnicity, right?
Hmm.
So I wanna just ask too, like, have you embraced that like as a faith as well, or like do you feel like it's more, even though you don't maybe know if you're, ethnically Jewish, then how does that like reconcile? I'm
There's a
curious.
couple. That's a lot to unpack. Uh, the short answer is just like everyone else brought up in a family with a faith. That's what you are. Very
Right.
few 7 or 8 year olds kind of question what you're doing. When you go to church or temple or mosque or whatever. It's just this is how it is. The
Right.
questioning comes later in life. Um, as far as ethnicity and all that, most folks kind of associate Jewish people with sort of the Eastern European, what was considered the Ashkenazi Judaism. But there's whole other, massive threads, ranging from Africa, China, India, the Iberian, the whole sort of Sephardic half of the religion, most of whom were, killed or kicked out of Spain. Uh, During the Inquisition, but there's a lot more than what you sort of in America at least perceive as Judaism. So
Mm.
to that point, yeah, I mean, just whatever my DNA is, and I mean, look at this. If who knows, might have been naturally that way anyway. Um, it's that's the smallest part of it. Just like any faith, it's
Mhm.
doesn't really matter where you came from. It's where you are.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, like our family is Christian, right? And I
Mhm.
think for us, it's like we always want to learn more about Judaism and like the Old Testament, right?
Mhm.
And it's always fascinating, just like all the different religious holidays and practices and how that also relates to Christianity. So,
Sure.
I mean, to me, like it's really amazing. That's cool. Have you faced any prejudices or discrimination like because of that, like
Oh yeah.
being Jewish?
Oh, sure. I mean,
Hmm.
growing up, every now and then there'd be pennies thrown and comments made in school or whatever.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. And even later in life, I can walk into a room and, unlike folks of other, say, ethnic heritages, where everyone knows when they walk in the room, I can walk in a room and there's no vibe. And then I say my last name, and you can see people's faces change sometimes,
Oh,
or,
really?
how,
So
how
they
folks
even
react to that.
associate a last name, but I didn't realize that.
Oh yeah, yeah. A German sounding name ending in Berg or Steen is very again with that sort of Eastern European Ashkenazi heritage. That is a clue sometimes, and you
Oh,
can see how people react, and sometimes negatively.
really?
Yeah.
Wow. So what about professionally? Like I know like some I talked to a lot of other folks about, in the workplace or like even at school. Like we talk about, especially for Asian Americans, there's this like bamboo ceiling, right? Where it's hard for Asian Americans sometimes to be promoted or advance in their career. Do you also see that professionally? I mean, I don't know, as a medical doctor, maybe that's a little bit different, right? Than like a corporate thing.
So yeah, no, I think I'm sure there is some component of that, but I think less in medicine than in some other fields. Um, I never got the sense that I was being held back for anything other than my own inadequacies in my career. But I am certain that it occurs, just like every ethnicity and
Mm.
religion and sexual orientation. There's discrimination everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. So now I'm gonna give you a softball questions. So where do you get your humor? Like I think I always appreciate this, but I feel like for me, like I don't know if I'm that funny, but I know that in high school is when I sort of got introduced to this idea of humor because
Mm,
in my family, actually my parents were pretty serious. I mean, they joke around too, but I think just culturally, like we don't really say like sarcastic things, you know, like it's whatever people say it, they say it, but when they're saying a joke, like it's really clear that it's a joke, right?
Right, right.
Whereas like when I went to high school, like a lot of my friends, you know, have a different culture than me, and and I was fascinated, right, by some of the things that they'll say, but like it sounds serious, but then actually it's funny, right? So I that's where sort of I learned how to do that, and I see the same thing like that you do, which like I think is really fun, and also helps lighten the mood sometimes, you know, when there's a heated discussion. I know like sometimes we have at the board level. I wonder too, like where do you get that? Not everybody has it, right? I think it's a skill, or it's a, you know, I don't know if you're, it's a genetically inborn trait. But
I think it's something I've not actually thought about the answer to, but I think you actually sort of answer yourself. It's you know how it's the people that you're around, the people that I was around growing up and in school and you know and at work and are people you know you sort of play off each other, and I think you have to have a certain willingness to go ahead and say something that may not be well received. There's plenty of jokes, as you know, that fall flat. Even if even and sometimes it can, you know, depressurize a situation. Other times it can make it worse. But I think it's just being comfortable, just saying what you're thinking, which is probably what other people are thinking too, but they're not willing to say it. So a
mm,
little bit of less inhibition and a little bit of being surrounded by people that sort of, you know, set you up for stuff. But
mm.
I would have to analyze that a little further. I'm not sure if this is making much sense.
No, I think it's just interesting that I think some people like, I guess there's a spectrum, right? But I think some people, you know, really have that humor and they can use it to their advantage, right? They can use it like in a presentation or when they're speaking to an audience. And then there's some people who just like are just more serious, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I do see it as a like an additional skill, right? Sort of like
Sure.
an additional um, tool that you can pull out sometimes when everything else is not working.
Right, right. Or fall off, you know, fall off your chair, pratfall or something is if the mood is too grim.
We'll have to wait for you to do that. So let me ask you a little bit about your day job. So can you tell me a little bit about like what you actually do day to day? Because I think sometimes, you know, we think, oh, doctors, you know, they're just like doing surgery all the time, or you know, they're talking to patients all the time. Can you tell us a little bit about actually what it's like to be in your shoes?
So it's certainly much less glamorous than on TV and in the movies, but like every job. Um, I think the thing that most people don't recognize is how little of the time is actually, you know, practicing medicine, such as surgery or talking to people, examining them, and how much is just paperwork and looking stuff up. You know, my day, for example, begins hours before the first person comes into the office, and that includes getting ready for them. You know, do we have a couple days before someone's visit? I go through the list of people coming and I see what we're waiting on. Are we looking for scans? Are we waiting on pathology results, blood work? And then without the pressure of that person being in the room, I have time to look it up. You know, what should we do here? Let's check this guideline. Let's see if there's a clinical trial available. Do I have to reach out to a colleague and ask a question? So there's before I even walk into the room with someone, there could be a half hour of prep work that has been done for what may wind up being a 5 minute visit. And then after what might be that 5 minute visit, there's another 10 or 15 minutes of just writing about what we did and making arrangements and maybe calling people. So I think that is sort of the main thing that I guess surprised me when I started doing medicine is how little is actual patient care and how much is uh, preparing for patient care, I guess. Now that's different for a surgeon, of course. You know, they will spend 8 hours, you know, operating on someone doing something that they've done a million times, so it only takes them 5 minutes to prepare for it. But in the, I guess, less procedural things, there's a ton of non-visible work.
Yeah, I think sometimes from a patient's perspective, they don't see that, right?
Right. You walk in, hey, how you doing? Yeah, this is it. Okay, here's what I'm gonna do. All right, see it. But there's, could be an hour, that led to that few minutes.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. I don't think I ever knew that.
But there could be other doctors smarter than me that don't need to look things up. It's
Well,
certainly
but that is
possible.
part of patient care, right? Because like to really get into the details and pick the right treatment or do the right thing, that's really important. You don't want to just obviously like do something random, right? So
Right. And
or
the
not
right
spend
thing.
enough time to analyze all the different options and come up with the best solution.
And part of the problem is that the right thing changes constantly. New research comes out, guidelines change, new drugs are available. So I've actually learned to not trust my memory at all. Every
Mm-hmm.
single treatment decision, even if I've done it a million times before, I look it up. And usually I remembered it sort of well. But other times I go, I didn't know we were doing this now, but okay. As things change.
Yeah, and every person is different, right? And how they
Oh, very true.
respond to different treatments.
Right.
Like you can't just be like, okay, this is the standard thing, right?
Right. Even within the standard, there's options, and you try to guide that according to what you know. But I also am very upfront with people, and I say I'm kind of guessing, how you're going to do here. I've been
Mm,
doing this 20 years. I've seen lots of people go through, but the thing you mostly learn is how individual people are, and there's a
right.
huge range of how people will tolerate things, and
Mm-hmm.
you have no idea until you start.
Yeah, but I think as a doctor, as long as you're honest and upfront about it, then I think people understand because they know that they're different too, right? So
Right. Right.
yeah. Do you feel like there's any time where you have like a emotional baggage from your job? Because I think that's one of the things that I worry the most about, like considering medicine. That like I think I maybe could physically do it, but I think for me, like where it ended, like where my pursuit of like doing job shadows and thinking about medicine was that like I didn't think I could emotionally handle it over the long haul, maybe for like a short period. So I wonder too, like if is mental health ever an issue, like for you personally, or do you see that in your colleague? Oh, sorry,
So
like in your
no, no, I
colleagues.
know what you're saying. Yeah, and it's everything you said is true. You do get attached to folks. You do care about them. You can't work this hard, if you don't care what you're doing. And that goes. That's not just medicine. That's every job. Because I don't think there's any easy jobs left anymore. But you have to care. And yeah, I get choked up sometimes. I rail against the unfairness of the universe sometimes. Um, but in the end, it's not me sitting in that chair. It's me sitting over here. So I kind of, I guess I don't want to take away from someone else's emotion and, what they're going through. And I try to just be as supportive as I can, um, and help them get through it as best they can. But yeah, there's days where you just sort of stare out the window for a while, and you need to take a pause before you move on to the next thing, and try to be ready for them.
Mm-hmm. I think that's tremendously difficult, right? Because you have to be the strong person, and there's that professional level of like detachment, like kind of like what you said is that you can't you're not in their shoes, so there is that line right between
Right.
the doctor and the patient. But I think I don't know, maybe is it something that you get like more muscles for, knowing that you're doing the good work and knowing that like you're helping people.
You hope
But
you are.
you hope you are.
Right.
Definitely. Yeah. Do you have any advice for young people who are thinking about medicine and like in terms of like how do they know if medicine is right for them? And if they think they know medicine is right for them, like what should they do to prepare for a career in medicine?
So that's uh, very very different for different folks.
Mm-hmm.
I started the process. I just like you said. I shadowed some docs. My father's a dentist, so I grew up in a
Oh.
healthcare family. So
Mm-hmm.
I had some sense of the phone calls in the middle of the night, and running to the office for someone bleeding or whatever. But so I followed in his footsteps for that. Um, but you just don't really know. And as I'm sure folks who have done training programs in every field and then got to work, you don't learn a single thing in school. You have to kind of, and you have no idea what it is until you start doing the job. So I certainly recommend folks explore as much as they can, shadowing opportunities, um, talking to people, getting a sense of things. Uh, it's rare. I've seen it, but it's very rare that folks go through all the training and then decide they don't actually like clinical medicine.
Mm.
The people are rarely surprised by that because they kind of know going in, what the general sense is. But as far as when are you really sure that you made the right call? I don't know. I like what I do. Um, I think everybody in every job wonders, well, I wonder if I had gone this other way, how my life would be, but I wouldn't change anything in how mine turned out.
Yeah, that's good. I think I agree. I think just experiencing it and doing job shadows, like it's a great way. I mean, for me, I found out that it wasn't for me, so I think that's also valuable information to know. So you're also technically a politician, right? I guess, or an elected official, I'd like to
No, it's okay. I'm a politician. You
say.
can say it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, because I know like as school board members, we don't like affiliate with parties, right? So I'm
Right.
not sure what's the right way to say that. And then your wife Michelle also is she's a legit
She's a real
politician,
politician.
right? So there's a lot of like civic activism in your family as well. Do you want to say a little bit about that? And I wonder too, like, the gender thing, right? Whereas like usually it's the wife of the politician, right? Or like in your case, you're the husband of a politician. Like, what is that like? Like, do you feel like
I am
I
an
want to get
excellent
your opinion?
politician's husband. During her first campaign, my role was to, drive her places while she was like prepare her speeches and whatnot. When we got to the events, I would take pictures, and I had my main role was to sort of hover in the background while she talked to people, and I had a little notebook and pen, and then when she would give me like a signal, I would come over and I would write down whatever she told me, like if it was somebody's name or some program she wanted to look into, and then I would fade back against the wall. So I think I was a very good, I remain a very good staff member for a politician. But Michelle is she's amazing. I don't think there's any sort of gender jealousy. That my wife is more successful in a chosen field, or you know you know for a while I was barely making any money and she was supporting us, and that's great. I love being married to somebody who's awesome and successful in things she does. So no, the fact that she's a woman and I'm a guy, the more successful she is, the better for me. Plus, I'm proud of her. So
That's
that's all good.
awesome. Yeah, that's so
Um,
awesome.
I might have lost track. Was there more to that question? Sorry.
No, no, I think it's good. I was just, because like sometimes I could imagine, right? Like if a husband and a wife and show up at a campaign thing, and if the name wasn't obvious, then they probably assume that it's the man who's running, right?
Ah, interesting.
And
No,
then
no, I'm sure there's
I'm
sexism
curious.
everywhere. That has not changed, right?
But I'm glad to hear that, you don't feel like, oh, like why am I in the background? Or, like I think that's really awesome that you can support her in that way. That's so
As you've seen, there are times I love to be in the forefront. I mean, I don't mind a microphone and being on a stage, but when I'm there to support her, I don't need to be the center of attention.
That's so great. So, anything else you want to share before we end? Sort of like last thoughts or words that maybe we didn't cover or that you want to give as advice for young people or just people out there who might be, I don't know, like interested in medicine or interested in school board or interested in being active in their communities?
Well, I think that last point is the main thing in that service.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we all do what we do. I grew up in a house where both of my parents volunteered in tons of organizations, were on boards, executive positions, and it's funny for years and years afterwards, I did none of that stuff. I worked, and my day job I think of as service as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then it sort of hit a spark when I decided to first run for school board, and I didn't run, because I suddenly had this sudden uh, community service mind. It was just, oh, I wanted to be on school board. I thought that'd be fun, and I would be able to help, and it might be a nice, fun new thing, and it has changed. That first time you swear an oath to the Constitution, like, wow, I am part of something big here. This is a serious business.
Mm.
I'm here representing people and serving the community, uh, and doing and it's that's when it sort of hit me that wow, I think I really do like community service, and I can see why my parents wanted to do it for all those years.
Mm.
And Michelle does it, and we hope that we have taught our kids the importance of serving.
Yeah. So like what kind of advice would you give to someone who maybe wants to do community service, but they don't know how to start, or they want to give back to the community? Maybe they're a little bit younger, or maybe they're new to a certain community. What do you think would be the best way to kind of get your feet wet?
I think probably join would be the word. There's an organization for everything that you can imagine, and probably organizations that you didn't even think of. So one of the ways I find out who's doing what is you just read the paper, and you'll read an article about this organization is doing this and this doing that, and you might say, oh, that sounds interesting. I might like to do that. And you call up, any of these places, city mission, historical society, board of education, and say, hey, what are you guys doing? What can I help out with? You'll find something, and you'll find someone that needs your help, and you start and you see how it goes.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. I think coming out of college for me, it was like in school, there's like all these clubs,
Hmm.
right, that are actually advertised, and we know what's out there. But when you come into a community as a new kind of graduate or new professional person, then sometimes it's a little bit hard to figure out like what's there, because not everything is really clear like it was in school.
Right.
So my hope is that young people, or just anybody, um, really take advantage and like plug into their communities and do things, and you reap a lot of rewards, right? Not like in terms
Right.
of money, but in terms of friends and connections and
Right.
the satisfaction.
Right. We only have so much time on the planet. Make the most of it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Howard. This has been fun.
Sure. Thank you
I
for
think
being interested.
Thank you so much for watching. Did you enjoy that conversation? Did you learn something new? I know I did. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for even more fun and interesting interviews.